Do you think aligning yourself with Vladimir Putin is going to be good for South Africa?
But that's what it is now.
You would welcome Vladimir Putin here right now,
Of course, we will welcome.
A man who is being investigated for war crimes by the International
We will
Criminal
welcome
Court.
him to come here as part and parcel of BRICS.
In a world still gripped by the shadows of empire, where global narratives are too often written in Western ink, two voices from the South rise to challenge the imbalance. Julius Malema, fearless, uncompromising, and unapologetically African. And alongside him, the ANC's Secretary-General, grounded in struggle, bold in defiance. In a tense encounter with the BBC's Stephen Saka, they didn't flinch. Instead, they turned the lens back on the West. When asked about Russia, they made their stance clear. Africa will not be bullied into silence. They questioned the moral authority of a world that demands accountability from Vladimir Putin, yet still shields the architects of the Iraq invasion, George Bush, Tony Blair, Barack Obama.
South Africa is in alliance with Russia, with India, with Brazil, with China. So why are you asking me as if it's some policy that is going to be implemented after I took over? South Africa is in alliance with Russia now.
South Africa right now calls itself non-aligned.
In the context of the war, but these are two different things. South Africa is an ally of Russia. Now, the second question is, where does South Africa stand on the war? It says I'm a non-aligned in relation to war, but Russia remains South Africa's friend. So we cannot create confusion around there. Don't create an impression that it is Malema who's going to come and create an alliance with Russia.
But there are some very specific...
Actually, I will go beyond that. I will go beyond the friendship with Russia, and in the war, I will align with Russia, and I will even supply the weapons to Russia. Because Russia is in a war with imperialism, and any agenda that seeks to push back imperialist agendas, it's well within the policies of the EFF.
You say, quite clearly, I would arm Vladimir Putin.
Yes.
You know that the International Criminal Court wants Vladimir Putin to face war crimes charges.
It must start with Tony Blair. It must start with George Bush. It must go to Barack Obama. Then it can go to Putin.
So let's get this straight. You're saying to me that your policy, if you were in power in South Africa, is quite simple. That your enemy's enemy, and it seems you regard the US and its allies as the enemy, your enemy's enemy is your friend. Never mind if he's a suspected war criminal, never mind if the UN and the ICC say they have compelling evidence of Russian war crimes. You don't care. As far as you're concerned, my enemy's enemy is my friend.
You're exaggerating, but another point which you don't want me to go there is that Tony Blair accepted that they were wrong about Saddam Hussein to an extent that he did an apology of a thug, right? You have never called for his arrest. A man admitting that I was wrong. To how many people died?
Independent sovereign existence. He appears to believe that the best thing would be to revive an empire, the Soviet empire. But you're anti-imperialist?
We are anti-imperialist. That's a debate for another day. The war is not what he's talking. The war is about the expansion. And had there been a common ground found, this could have been avoided. We are not for imperialism, even if it were to come from Russia. If he does that, we'll condemn it. But we know for a fact that progressive forces such as China have also aligned themselves with Putin to try and create an alternative from the imperialist domination of the world. And that's what the EFF is about.
You admire China, you admire, it seems, Putin. What you seem to have as a vision for South Africa's future is much more along those lines, authoritarianism than democracy.
No, socialism is not authoritarianism.
So how can you describe China as progressive?
No, it's very progressive. China subscribed to Leninism and Marxism, where the working class controlled the commanding heights of the economy. And that's what we subscribe for. we are of the means of production being owned and controlled by the states. We want South Africa through the vision and the image of China, where you grow the economy, where you reduce unemployment, where you reduce poverty, and you can't take that away from China. And the state plays the central role with regard to that.
That kind of message and the messaging on Russia has seen the rand plunge against the US dollar. Hang on, we see many corporations in South Africa looking at establishing headquarters elsewhere. We see foreign direct investment flatlining in this country. Do you believe that the rhetoric you are using is good for the South African economy?
I've been doing this from when you interviewed me 15 years ago when I was young. And therefore you can't say the rand to dollar crisis today is created by this message that I've been spreading for so many years, from my early ages. And then this
No,
party
but what I'm
has been
suggesting is that the new
party-
tensions between Washington and the government in South Africa have definitely affected the financial markets.
No, it was the crisis as we see it today, as we have this conversation, me and you. It was worsened by the irresponsible utterances by the ambassador of the USA, who just recklessly, without following the diplomatic protocols, went out to make certain allegations about our country, damaging its good image, and then undermining its sovereignty in terms of choosing who its friends are. And today we see the rand being weak because of such utterances. Why would the rand be weakened by a political posture that says this is what we want to be when we take over government? We want a government that will be owned by the corrupt free. I admire China when it comes to how it deals with crime. I admire China when it comes to how it deals with infrastructural development. I admire China on how it has dealt with poverty and unemployment. How would that weaken the rand? Is that not what the investors want for all of us?
South Africa is a treaty member of the International Criminal Court. If Putin comes here in August, as planned, your government will be obliged to arrest him. As head of the ANC, do you believe your government should and indeed will arrest Vladimir Putin?
If it was according to the ANC, we will want President Putin to be here even tomorrow.
You would?
To come to our country. But
you would welcome Vladimir Putin here right now?
Of course we will welcome.
A man who is being investigated for war crimes by the International Criminal Court.
We will welcome him to come here as part and parcel of BRICS, but we know that we are constrained by the ICC in terms of doing that. Putin is a head of state. Do you think that a head of state can just be arrested anywhere? How many crimes have your country committed in Iraq? How many crimes have everyone else who's so vocal today committed in Iraq and Afghanistan? Have you arrested them? You have not.
You know the impact that this stand of yours...
You're making a lot of noise about putting in state of working for peace between Ukraine and Russia, and you failed to resolve the war. Where are the weapons of mass destruction? Tony Blair went to Iraq and claimed that they are weapons of mass destruction. Did you see anybody standing against that in the United Kingdom and Britain? More than millions of people have died in Iraq and Afghanistan, and there are no weapons of mass destruction. We know what the war is about.
Mr. Secretary General,
between Russia and Ukraine. We want peace. That's what is important, so that world can thrive. And organs and institutions of the world that institute world peace must not be conspicuous by their silence.
This is not just about geopolitics. It is about principle. It is about justice. It is about Africa's right to speak for itself, to choose its allies, to define its future, to rise. The age of imperial dictate is fading. A new Africa is emerging, bold, unshackled, and ready to reclaim its place worldwide. Now, hear from the voices leading that charge.
Alliance shoot to kill Gamaza, kill the poor. the farmer, kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa, pa. Attention.